people that hear these stories that think it's fucking a bit out of line to be talking about that stuff. I get it. It's funny. He's talking to an absolute fucking psychopath who's responsible for multiple mass graves throughout the Middle East. So we shot a couple of dudes and the whole village had come out to sort of see what was going on, and naturally they weren't too happy. Then again, who likes seeing your neighbour get shot in the fucking face?
This is Scott Jones, but like all legends called Scott, he prefers a nickname, Scojo. He was in Australia's Special Forces 2nd Commando Regiment, where he was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan to do what he does best.
Shoot you in the fucking head.
For a while, Scojo ran an Instagram page and a podcast producing amazing content, a beautiful coalescence of his almost pathological longing for attention and acceptance that he is indeed a legendary digger, and the absolute impunity the top brass of Australian defence give to soldiers to boast about. Some of their, let's just say, disdain for the rules of engagement. War crimes. So his podcast and Instagram feed contains some stunning admissions from Scojo and his mates. But let's be clear, no one else should be mistaken enough to think they could get away with admitting to what you'll soon see Scojo admit to on his podcast. Scojo only gets away with this shit because he's, quote,
an absolute fucking psychopath who's responsible for multiple mass graves throughout the Middle East.
You know, the type of guy that would
fucking laugh at the Afghans every now and then.
Yeah. These are real quotes from Scojo. He openly admits how much he hates the Afghan people, admits that he only went to war for the violence. But that's just the beginning. We'll get into the best content very soon, I promise. I just wanted to make it clear before you go out and start posting about how you're a necrophile on Instagram, don't. If you were a normal person boasting about the shit Scojo boasts about, you'd be thrown into a psych ward. If you looked like Scojo, probably a psych ward for leprechauns, because come on, don't you think he looks like the ADF only let him pass selection because they thought he'd bring the diggers luck? A definitely valid target at the end of the rainbow. A rainbow of medals. That Irish luck could explain the level of protection afforded to Scojo from defence, which you'll soon find out is honestly astounding. I mean, it's like if the best snitch drug dealer in town had a podcast detailing the best packages over his career. So this video is a bit of an investigation into what the Australian Department of Defence finds acceptable for soldiers to publicise and I guess do during war, and what crosses their line. Hint, telling on people for war crimes crosses their line. Telling on yourself does not. Bit of context, Australians, we're kind of into war crimes. So much so that we got this judge to go interview our soldiers to see who did the best war crime and then make a report about it. Well, seeing how Scojo goes on, that's probably what the soldiers thought the Brereton investigation was, but it was actually, well, it was pretty much just that, but without finding the best war crime bit. So sorry, Scojo, no prizes. Oh wait, actually, you got heaps of medals. In 2016, Justice Brereton was commissioned by the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force ADF to conduct an investigation into potential war crimes committed by the ADF in Afghanistan. This report was finally released in 2020, and what it found was, I was gonna say shocking, but when you've got Instagram pages run by ex-soldiers dedicated to boasting about what Brereton was investigating, you kind of know it was going to find that there were war crimes committed. Probably easier than pinning Andrew Tate, to be honest. Didn't he have that website www.humantrafficking-passiveincomelifehack.com.ro? So in short, the report found, yeah boys, well done, yous are the loosest cunts there. One of the more popular war crimes it found was the too common practice of blooding. You know, giving the boys their first kill. Typically, the patrol commander would take a person under control and the junior member, who would then be directed to kill the person under control. Yeah! Dingo got his first kill and, oh, what's that? What's that? He's got a boner! He's got a little boner! He's fucking peaky! Usually I'm not into that woke shit, but blooding is no exception. How about you drink a cup of concrete and harden the fuck up, soy boys? No, but seriously, if I was in Afghanistan and someone I knew was killed in a blooding incident by Squadron Permanent Schoolies, I'd go full woke. I'd go lefty loony. I'd join the Taliban. The The Brereton report found that another one of their favourite war crimes was shooting some unarmed person, then afterwards planting a gun or an ICOM radio on them so military investigators would believe that who they shot was a legitimate target. They call them throwdowns, because you throw them down on a corpse. Our boys can be larrikins, in case you didn't know that about Australians. Scojo apparently loved doing this one so much he got a tattoo of it.
Carpenter B represents working in
Oh yeah, that's fucking sick. This tattoo represents the Grim Reaper tucking in a Taliban fighter to sleep, who's got a little ICOM radio down beside his bed, because for some reason legal officers before I got to Afghanistan decided that if you had one of these little ICOM radios in your possession, it was as good as an AK-47 and we could shoot you in the fucking head, because that's all you fucking deserved, you cunts.
It's kinda cool. It's a bit too arty for my tastes. I think he should have just got, "I've killed innocent people," and then lied to lawyers about it being self-defense, written on his forehead in cursive. But then it got me thinking, man, I have got to get a tattoo of my favourite crime, contempt of court. Does anyone know someone who could do a really good drawing of me screaming, "Fuck you, I'm a sovereign citizen and a federal court judge"? If so, HMU. I'm thinking of a stick and poke. Really though, think about how insane that is. At best, that is a tattoo celebrating you being so shit at your job, you have to lie about your killings to investigators. So again, a crime, but at worst, and what I'm pretty sure it is, a tattoo on an Australian commando boasting about breaching the fucking Geneva Convention. This planting evidence shtick is quite a regular occurrence on Scojo's Instagram, just to give you an idea of how common it would have been during the Afghan war.
No matter how heavy your pack is before a mission, there's always room for a throwdown. Or two. Your RSM won't let you drink on deployment, fill this up with a litre worth of vodka. Or improvise, adapt, and overcome. Yeah, fuck oath, cob loaf. Hang on a second though. Yeah, you're good.
Even without the Brereton report, it's been more than well documented how soldiers would lie to investigators about killings with complete impunity. The Four Corners report Killing Field aired helmet camera footage of an unarmed Afghan farmer killed at point blank range by an Australian soldier. It then revealed afterwards that soldiers told investigators that the Afghan was shot 15 to 20 metres away and was holding an ICOM radio, just like the tattoo. Now, to be clear, that Four Corners wasn't on Scojo, he wasn't in the SAS, and also, as if he's that tall. But his podcast does again give an insight into how willing to mislead legal investigators about killings Australian soldiers were. Perhaps one of the most stunning admissions in Scojo's content comes from his mate, Machine Gun Dave. And it's the story of how he got that nickname. And I could retell it, but as much as we're laughing at Scojo, well, yeah, that's the point. Let's just listen to Scojo and his mate because they are very funny. This particular story, or bedtime worry as Scojo colourfully puts them, begins with Dave telling Scojo how he was setting up a VCP for a KLE. VCP means Vehicle Control Program and KLE means Key Leader Engagement, like meeting. So in plain English, making sure vehicles don't get too close to a meeting. Yeah, get used to it. In the military, they love useless acronyms. Anyway, I'll let the boys take it from here.
So what were you looking to stop? Like why were you stopping traffic on that road?
Basically just to stop any movement coming into that area where the KLE was being held.
Yeah.
So I don't even have a clue of what they were fucking talking about in this KLE.
Yeah.
But probably about 20 minutes into the VCP, round the corner comes this bloody little postie bike and a couple of blokes on it.
Yeah, so you're laying down on your guts with the gun, and you're facing down this road. You look up, there's nothing else going on. You've got a KLE off behind you, and all you can see is a potential threat, or it could be anyone on a bike. And a lot of Afghanis, especially the Taliban, are known to use motorbikes to get around, to scoot around the village, and you see them come down the road towards you.
Yeah, that's right.
See why we hide these guys? Their cunning intelligence. Taliban sometimes ride motorbikes. Can you see why these guys are our special forces?
People coming around the corner, especially on a fucking motorbike, they wouldn't have been able to see us in time because obviously Australian diggers, mate, we're good at cam and concealment, so
fucking oath.
blending in. We were yelling out to this cunt to fucking stop. Both of them were on the bike, fucking, and they were hammering it and not even showing signs of slowing down. My first thought was, okay, there's going to be a fucking vehicle-borne IED here, and we're gonna fucking cop it,
which is very common.
Yeah, well, our 2IC was on the 2007 trip, and there was a lot of vehicle-borne IEDs during that trip for them, especially in TK. And he was always saying, be on the lookout for fucking VBIEDs, cunt.
Oh, yep, very common, yep. See, they're putting it together. Taliban plus motorbikes, plus in wars, there are sometimes bombs. A deadly equation. Are you doing the maths? These boys are.
So anyway, this bloke on a motorbike, and he fucking hit another gear, like he was changing gears up, not down. And yeah, got to probably within 25, 30 metres. So he'd gone well and truly over the free fire line, which is supposed to be about 50 metres.
So you're giving him the benefit of the doubt because at that range, a VBID's going to definitely kill you and take you out of the fight. Yeah,
well, that's it. I was just sitting off the road, probably a couple of metres off the road in this little ditch where they use off the aqueducts to get all their water lines and stuff. So it was a small ditch. Anyway, gave in 2 bursts of the best. And
So where are you aiming at this point?
Mate, all through training, they're like, oh, you've got to disable the vehicle. You've got to disable the vehicle first. And cunt was on a postie bike, so if I'm disarming the vehicle, I'm aiming at centre of scene mass.
100%,
And, being on the gun, if anyone's worked a gun before, they obviously fire upwards if you've got a good grip on it, and basically just ripped him up and took half his head off, and the bloke behind him copped the rounds that went straight through him. And
skewered him.
Yeah, mate, it was the old enfilade fire, but real close,
Beautiful.
So he went down like a sack of shit, and the bloke on the back, the bloke on the front, obviously had half his head gone, so he was out. He'd gone to Allah. And the bloke on the back started yelling out, "Policia, policia," or whatever the fuck whatever their word for police was. But that's what he was trying to yell out. And we're like, "Oh fuck!" We knew at that stage that we'd just hit 2 cops.
So Machine Gun Dave had just machine gunned down Afghan police officers. People ostensibly on our side. And look, I know mistakes happen in war. They could have been in genuine fear of their lives, seeing something as spooky as a fast motorcycle with 2 people on it. Yeah, I'm sure if it was a fucking suicide bomber, the Taliban would make sure that there's 2, because wasting 1 life isn't enough. 72 virgins is too much for 1 man, apparently. Just chuck someone on the back for absolutely no reason. I guess the proverb 2 birds with 1 stone doesn't exist in Afghanistan, and they were trying to invent it. 2 guys, 1 bike. You really nailed it, Skojo. Okay, even with this, I'll admit, all's fair in love and war. Could have been a genuine mistake, but what Machine Gun Dave admits to next is quite amazing.
But are they dressed in police uniform?
According to the official report, they were not.
Okay, so according to the official report, the military police do to see if a killing was, legal. The men weren't in police uniforms. But listen to this next part.
You're a digger. You were trying to do the best job that you could to protect your mates, and it was your life or theirs in your mind, and you made a decision and you backed yourself, and you're sitting in front of an ADFAS team being investigated. What are your chain of command doing at that point? Are they just hanging you out to dry, or did you have senior dudes in there helping you and providing you support?
Well, we came together at the start. I thought we were going to get thrown under the bus with the whole "you should have used a Bentley" fucking call. I thought we were going to get thrown under the bus, but the guys pulled together because we knew we were going to go back for this investigation, and it was basically everyone write down their story, and this is what happened. And it basically was what happened.
Yeah.
Besides the uniform thing.
Yep.
Because they clearly were wearing uniforms after the fact, but you can't tell because their uniforms look just exactly like the normal clothes, a fucking uniformed colour.
Yeah.
So
it's not like
that
New South Wales police uniform where it's bright blue and everyone looks the same and it's uniform.
You got to do normal clothes, but just dark green.
That's right. And one dude's got white shoes on, the other dude's got his flip flops on.
Exactly, and they had flip flops on.
Yeah.
So, so we basically stuck with each other, and I think a lot of the senior, like the secos and that, came to our rescue, so to speak, by basically saying, okay, we need to stick together during this.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? The Afghan cops he shot were in uniform. Yet everyone there that day got together, conspired to lie to the Australian Defence Force Investigative Service, ADFIS, about the men wearing uniform to, I guess, I don't know, avoid accountability for what at best was a fatal mistake, and at worst, well, we don't know what it was at worst because the results of the investigation into the incident we now know were based on lies. Look, you might be thinking, that's not even that shocking, but what is shocking is publicly admitting that on a podcast that you and your team lied to the Commonwealth about the time you killed a cop. That's pretty astounding, right? To have the confidence that the Australian Defence Force cares so little about the conduct of its troops overseas that you can just say, yeah, you know that time I shot 2 cops that we were allied with, creating a mini international incident and forcing my platoon out of the Baluchi Valley?
During the conduct of that vehicle checkpoint, a motorcycle carrying 2 individuals failed to stop at that checkpoint. That motorcycle was then engaged, killing 1 individual and wounding another.
The Australian Army said at the time that when the troops opened fire, the men on the motorbike were not wearing their uniforms and did not identify themselves as Afghan police or ANP.
Yeah, that's correct. But that was not identified at all prior to the engagement. They were on a motorcycle, not a Afghan National Police vehicle. And it was only after the engagement that they were then identified by other police that they were part of the ANP.
Yeah, we all conspired and lied to Australian military police about that one. Fuck. These boys are loose. And did anything happen in the end? Was anyone punished for what even then they knew was a massive mistake?
Nothing happened to us besides we never did a VCP for the rest of the trip after that.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is good because VCPs are boring as batshit.
Just didn't have to do the boring vehicle control jobs anymore. Yeah, Davey and the boys get a bit too bored on those jobs, so just give them the jobs where they drop cunts. But perhaps the most terrifying thing in this entire pod is the message Skojo and Dave deliver at the end.
It's okay to go with your gut feeling and pump some cunts if you need to.
Yeah, fucking oath. You got to pull the trigger. Don't be scared, boys. Because your chain of command will always back you.
Even the shit ones.
Do what you want. Chain of command will always back you. Now you can see the reason we had an issue with war crimes. And look, I do want to make this clear. If there wasn't the admission about lying, I might not have even highlighted this part. I don't want to shame veterans about killings they could already feel guilty about. We know war is hell. Well, for most people. No, war's sick. It's the boring VCPs that are hell. But the absolute disdain Skojo and Machine Gun Dave show for the Afghan people over the course of this pod, alongside the admission about misleading ADFIS, I mean, it makes them more than fair game for ridicule. After all, Skojo loves dark humour. He was the platoon clown. Listen to this corker.
Although I had a Green Beret and I had the trust of the dudes that I was with, I was actually just stoked to be following them around like a little kid, like sort of Richie Beno, just commentating over the radio every time they shot someone. Great shot, yes, marvellous. Oh, that's 2 from 2, Jono, that's 2 from 2. And just absolutely taking the piss, just providing light comedic relief to high stress situations where dudes are fucking peaking. And I just saw my mate shot a dude's fucking head off, and then that dude's children have run out of the compound and are literally picking up his brain off the ground and scooping it into their dad's skull to try and revive him, because naturally Afghan kids don't really have a concept of sort of medical science, and that was probably one of the wildest things that I've ever sort of been in the vicinity of seeing. That dude was running with an AK to try and flank us, but he didn't see the mortars team was down in the creek line just fucking waiting there tactically with good cam and concealment. So my mate shot him in the head and he kind of sardined himself into the ground, and yeah, his kids run out and is literally scooping his brains off the ground and then slapping them back into his skull, trying to revive him. And while this is all going on and there's a high stress kind of situation, the only thing that could have made that sort of whole crazy situation sort of better was a fucking cheeky joke. And naturally Skojo comes through with a cheeky little comment that makes everyone giggle, and someone said, that was the most hectic thing I've ever seen in my life. And I said, well, the part where the kids were playing fucking sandcastles with their dad's brains, that just made it so much better. And fucking shit, and if that's all my job was and that's all I had to do was just to keep the boys happy, and then now post-service in my discharge little world, if that's all I have to do to keep dudes from fucking topping themselves or crying into their beers every night because they didn't acquire any other skills and they just shut their blinds every night and say, I used to be an operator and you need to respect me and fucking give me free shit because I earned it. Well, yeah, you did, bro, but you also sort of limited yourself. So if I can give those boys a cheeky giggle and remind them of the good times and the fun stories through, bedtime warriors, then I'm all fucking for it. So hope you enjoyed it, cunts.
What the fuck is this guy? Psychopath Phil Olivetti. Instead of the talk about a rough day at work.
It's at times like that you don't often think of funny things to say, but I did. And I turned to the rescue workers and I said...
The part where the kids were playing fucking sandcastles with their dad's brains.
That was referring to the spending the time up there being pretty rough.
That is the greatest comparison I've made on this channel, apart from the following. Vorsh and George Takei, same vibe. Again, you might think this is just a digger making jest of a terrible situation they were forced into. Well, no. Skojo is a special breed. In other pods, he talks about desperately wanting to go to war just for the violence. I mean, he signed off one of his pods with.
So go out there, pour yourself a Milo, enjoy life, and potentially go over to Ukraine and fucking fight for the Ukrainian people, not because you believe in their cause, but because you like violence, and that's okay.
So there's been an investigation into war crimes committed by the ADF in Afghanistan. The investigation found credible evidence of war crimes. There are videos of war crimes. You have soldiers on Insta with tattoos celebrating war crimes. Podcasts openly discussing lying about killing 2 investigators. So do you have any prosecutions of the war criminals? Nah. But there has been one prosecution of an Afghan veteran, David McBride, for war crimes. Well, for leaking evidence of war crimes to the media after his internal complaints went nowhere. First mistake, Dave. If you wanted to air allegations of war crimes and not face prosecution, you should have gone on Bedtime Warriors with your boy Skojo. I've made many videos detailing the plight of David McBride. It's honestly astounding and scary that his prosecution is still ongoing. I highly recommend these videos. One, because there is a complete lack of press on this topic. The ABC, the outlet that first published the McBride leaks, didn't even go to his trial. And 2, because the presenter is effortlessly cool. No homo. Well, just a little. But today I'm going to do what the Australian Defence Force clearly could not, make Skojo useful for once. Yeah. You've got a job that will actually help people today, Skojo. Not just shooting cunts and planting throwdowns in a war that Osama bin Laden himself wanted the West in because he knew after tanking our economies and draining us of resources, we would ultimately lose. Skojo you're going to help make my argument as to why McBride's charges are an absolute affront to the rule of law in this country. Essentially, McBride's case comes down to if it was in the public interest to leak to the ABC, another government body, mind you, documents pertaining to investigation of war crimes. In other videos, I think I've outlined pretty well that yes, it was in the public interest. I think it's pretty self-evident. But where Scojo and his mates become very useful is that they serve to highlight how McBride's prosecution is a complete aberration on the part of the Federal Police, Australian Defence Force, and Director of Public Prosecutions. Because what he leaked is so banal in comparison to what soldiers like Scojo and others chuck up on social media all the time. I mean, we just listened to a guy admit to an entire platoon conspiring to lie to military police. I have to repeat it. Scojo got a tattoo of war crimes. His Instagram was helmet cam footage galore, and Scojo is far from the only soldier loose with material gathered from the war. In fact, I've confirmed that SAS soldiers make cool little clips to share around, clips that include classified Australian signals intelligence. See this? Says secret, and rightfully so. This is pretty classified shit, and much more hot material than anything McBride leaked. These videos contain the coordinates of where an Apache chopper was when it was dropping cunts. And this footage is just floating around like they're my nudes. Look at you fucking perverts scrambling to Google my nudes. Yeah, I'm talking to you, spooks. You prosecute David for leaking evidence of war crimes, and yet you immediately jump to access actually sensitive material. For shame. One of the montages even appears to have footage from an American Apache helicopter shooting people. Look, I don't know if that footage is classified or not, but it kind of seems like something that shouldn't be floating around. Are the soldiers that are playing around with signals intelligence like its funniest home videos getting prosecuted for what McBride is, unlawfully disclosing a Commonwealth document, or unlawfully giving or obtaining information as to defences? Or are these soldiers being prosecuted for theft of Commonwealth property? Fuck no. Because these videos, unlike McBride's material, haven't embarrassed the top brass of the Australian military, until perhaps now, and proved how they abdicated their basic responsibilities as they oversaw and essentially permitted war crimes in Afghanistan. After all, as Scojo and Machine Gun Dave say,
your chain of command will always back you.
Shame that doesn't go for McBride. His prosecution isn't about security. You can leak material that's far more damaging to national security than a few docs outlining war crimes, i.e. exact fucking coordinates and strategy of multiple chopper attacks. McBride's prosecution is a Christian Porter era exercise in retribution, and these clips really serve to demonstrate that fact beyond a shadow of a doubt. They highlight what an aberration from the norm McBride's prosecution is. It is extremely common practice for Australian soldiers to be loose with material way more sensitive than what McBride leaked. It's common practice apparently for them to boast about breaking the law, but there's only been one prosecution. If spooks in the Australian government want to maintain even a shred of credibility, they will either drop McBride's prosecution immediately, or they will trawl through Instagram and prosecute dozens more soldiers for leaking worse material that is in no way in the public interest and leaked for less noble causes, i.e., 3 kills in a row. Schmitty, you've unlocked the UAV. McBride's case is going to trial this year. The government has already drained him of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he really needs $150K just for the chance to stay out of prison. And look, you could think this case is about a single whistleblower. It's not. It's about the institutions of Australia, and if we're going to let them become so infested with self-serving careerists that they can chuck a man in for exposing murder, whilst letting the murderers keep their medals whilst they publicly boast about murdering. McBride going to prison will represent a massive degradation in the rule of law in this country, but it will also represent something bigger, something I don't think anyone can really grasp at the moment, and that is scary. So donate. McBride needs to be able to afford to defend himself. The future of our country is at stake. I would offer to give the ad rev from this video to him, but as you could probably tell, it's not going to get any ad rev. So for that reason, make sure you donate. I'm off the hook.
Righto, cunts, listen in. A lot of you message me, most of my DMs, if they're not dick pics or pictures of fucking chicks' buttholes, they are messages saying, Scojo, where's your podcast and when it's coming back? Well, there's a very good answer to that. A lot of people in our media that don't agree with my opinions on the fact that the war crimes that have been alleged against Australian Special Forces is actually bullshit. Now, because they don't like that rhetoric, they preach for free speech, but they don't actually want that. They don't actually want people with opposing views to share their views on what they think actually happened over there. So what happened is, just last night, a individual by the name of Jordan Shanks decided to do a podcast on my podcast, utilizing all of my content, photos, videos, and jokes as a story that he wants to promote that I'm an absolute piece of shit. Now, a lot of his followers have been messaging me saying, how dare you? A lot of them had blue hair and looked like twinks, but unfortunately, the reality is that Spotify can disable my podcast whenever they want because it's their platform and I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But if you want me to continue worries, I haven't been able to prove who's the one behind removing my podcast and Instagram from all these platforms. Well, now we know. Here's one dude, Jordan Spanks, or whatever his name is, FriendlyJordies. The dude that got his house fucking firebombed a couple times now because he pisses off the wrong people. So now I think it's time that you jump into his comments, his DMs, his Instagram, his Twitter, his YouTube account, and let him know your disdain for him and the way that he treats veterans that is trying to stick up for their mates. And maybe you can also mention, potentially, if Bedtime Warriors was a good podcast and you found the positives of dark humor and being able to laugh at the situations that I found myself in overseas, rather than sit there and medicate yourself with PTSD medication, which doesn't obviously actually help anything, it just masks the problem. Whereas if you could listen to a podcast about listening to a podcast about the good times and all the fun memories and fun times that we had overseas might actually help you forget the bad times. That's my whole concept. I said it a million times, if we don't laugh, we cry. So the left media that are so against me and against the boys that have been accused of war crimes, unsubstantiated obviously, they want to shut our voices down. They don't want us to have Instagram, they don't want us to have a podcast because it proves that their narrative is wrong. No one's been charged. No one's been charged, just accusations. I can make an accusation right now. I won't do that. But yeah, jump on. I'm going to post the link now to the podcast that came out today with my good friend old Jordo. And you guys can let him know in the comments of his shit, and I call it shit, and let him know and maybe ask him why he's so butthurt. And it is Pride Week, so I use that as a little bit of a pun. But yeah, let him know. I'd like to respectfully call upon all
mill meme trolls to get out there and do your best. But at no point should anyone use any threats of violence against the man, because he recently had his house firebombed. You hate to see it. Wasn't me though. Could have been anyone.
And people come around and go, I thought you hated Afghanistan. Why do you have a Pashtun blanket? What does that say? And it says this blanket is big enough to keep the whole of Afghanistan warm, but I didn't want them to keep warm because I fucking hated them. And it makes me laugh every single time that I see it. So maybe that's a way to deal with your mental health from Afghanistan, is just to fucking laugh at the Afghans every now and then, because it's pretty kind of funny what happened.